Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Jessica Freedman. I am the chair and founder of MedEdit's Medical Admissions. I am an emergency physician and I am a former faculty member and medical school admissions committee member at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Today I'm going to talk about the 2025-2026 Perelman secondary essay prompts, and I'm going to discuss how you should be approaching them based on the students whom we have had who have been successful getting accepted to Perelman. As you know, Perelman is one of the most competitive medical schools in the United States with very high metrics for medical school applicants, very high MCATs, very high GPAs, and exceptional experiences. That said, if you are applying, you should give it your absolute best shot. And secondary essays are key to getting into medical school because the secondary essays are where medical schools are able to ask those questions that are the most important to them, their values, and their ideals. So let's go ahead, let's get started, and let's go through each of these secondary essay prompts one by one. Number one, were there challenges related to your academic, professional, and or personal circumstances due to the COVID-19 pandemic that you would like to share with the committee, yes or no? 500 characters if yes. Now, COVID at this point was a while ago. I think that in the next couple of years, this COVID question is going to drop off because in our experience, some applicants were even in high school when COVID happened. We advise students to only answer this question, assuming that it is optional, as it is for Perelman. You should only answer this question if you truly had any exceptional experiences related to COVID, if it really impacted you in a very significant way. If it impacted you in a more typical way, I can tell you that admissions committees are kind of sick of hearing about all of those traditional ways that COVID impacted everybody. So if your classes had to go virtual, if you had to stop your activities, your research, that's all very typical, and that is nothing that is exceptional to how you experience COVID. So unless there was an exceptional circumstance, I would recommend that you do not answer this question. During the COVID-19 pandemic, this is prompt number 2, if you were afforded an option to continue courses with a standard grading system or switch to pass-fail and you selected pass-fail, please describe the reasons for your decision here, 500 characters. So if you had the decision to go pass-fail or to take a standard grading system and you chose to go pass-fail, your reasoning better really makes sense, and you really have to have a very convincing reason for why you didn't take those classes for a standard grading system. I would recommend a very straightforward approach to this essay. Don't make excuses, don't beat around the bush, be very, very direct. Did you get sick? Did someone in your family get COVID whom you had to care for? Was there a reason why you decided to go pass-fail? But be very straightforward. Don't make any excuses. Prompt number 3. Have you taken or are you planning to take time off between college graduation and medical school matriculation? Yes, no. If yes, please describe your activities during the time in 500 characters or less. So this is your typical gap year question or time away from formal education question. And for the majority of applicants, unless you just started a new activity that started since you submitted your primary application, these activities are going to be detailed in your primary application. Therefore, you don't have to go into significant detail describing these experiences. You also don't have a lot of characters to go into a lot of detail. So again, answer this question in a very straightforward way, assuming that you are not in college during your application year. What are you doing? What do you plan to do? How do you plan to spend your time? And if you've had several years away from college and therefore you have more to pack into their question, it is fine to take a somewhat list-based approach to this essay, again, because all of those experiences are going to be written about in much more detail in your primary application. Okay, let's move on. Prompt 4. Have you participated in any global activities outside of the U.S. prior to submitting your AMCAS application? Yes or no? 1,000 characters if yes. This is a really interesting question, actually. And the reason that I say that it's interesting is because medical schools, if you are participating in activities outside of the United States, medical schools prefer to see that that is a continual experience, that it's something that you are engaged in over time, something where you are really making an impact. So it isn't just sort of a voluntourism type of trip where you're going to Guatemala for a week, or you're signing up for a trip where you get to shadow physicians in other countries. If you are traveling elsewhere, you want to demonstrate that you have been meaningfully engaged in that global activity, not only when you were there, but also perhaps before you left or once you got back. I think based on the students with whom we work, many students are going to be answering no to this question. I also would not consider study abroad part of this question, but I also think it would be perfectly fine to include study abroad. So if you did do study abroad, I think you could mention that. But if you didn't participate in any activities that were sort of distinctive to that region where you studied, again, I would answer this in a very straightforward fashion: why you chose to study abroad, what you learned while you were there. But I wouldn't necessarily write in tremendous detail about that. Okay, prompt number 5. How would your life experiences contribute to Perelman? Please explain and limit your response to 1,000 characters. 1,000 characters is actually a really generous essay, and something that we explain to our students is you want to follow the lead of the prompt limit. So 1,000 characters, they actually are asking you to write something fairly long here for a secondary essay. So they'd like some details. This is also a very, very open-ended prompt. And it's an open-ended prompt because they want you to think on your own. They want you to come up with your own authentic answer for what life experiences would contribute to Perelman and how those life experiences would contribute to Perelman. So we find that these kinds of questions tend to be the most difficult for applicants because it's so open-ended. And so the best way to think about this is, what is distinctive about you? What is unusual about your life experiences, about your perspective, about how you approach situations or problems, or about the insights that perhaps you gained either through your own life at home growing up, your own college experience, or maybe your involvement in a formal experience, whether that was an extracurricular activity or research or some sort of clinical activity. So questions that are open-ended in this fashion actually offer you the opportunity to really cherry pick those experiences that are going to be the most distinguishing about you. And that's, I think, a gift, okay? Now, the key thing that you want to address in this question is, how is that going to contribute to the medical school class at Perelman? That is a key part of this question, and don't leave that out, because all medical schools want to know how you are going to contribute to their medical school student body. How are you going to be an asset for the other members of your class and for the medical community as a whole? So please do not leave out that part of the prompt. Okay, question number 6. We are all navigating through challenging times at home and abroad, and physicians and physician scientists must contend with many instances of uncertainty. Please describe a time when you faced a situation that was ambiguous, confusing, or uncertain, and how you navigated making a decision without complete information. 3,000 characters for that prompt. So again, they're looking for something here that is going to require some explanation, that is going to require you to really set the stage for what this challenging situation was, how you navigated that ambiguity or that uncertainty, and then how you came up with that decision. So in medicine, you know, we certainly are living through challenging times, but I can tell you that as a physician, when you're working in medicine, you are constantly faced with ambiguous situations where perhaps there is not a definitive correct answer or a definitive path forward. And you've got to sort of consider all sides of every situation. And that's how you then have to decide how you're going to move forward and how you are going to find comfort in that ambiguity. So they really want to know sort of what your coping skills are, how you are able to consider all sides of a situation, how you are able to consider all the data you have or all the information you have, and you're able to take that into consideration, and then how you come up with your own educated best path forward. So as you're answering this question, and that, you know, this can be a question of personal, this can be about something personal in your life. This can be about, you know, an encounter you had with somebody, encounter you had with a patient. This can be something of more of like an intellectual type of challenge. So answering this question is going to require a lot of thinking on your part to come up with the topic that is going to show that you can sort of reason your way through ambiguity and come up with a logical path forward that makes sense without panicking, staying calm, being reasonable, considering all aspects of the situation. That's a tough question. Okay, number 7. Have you or your family experienced economic hardships regardless of current income status? Yes or no? Now, for many students who are going to answer this question, it's 1,000 characters or less. Many students who are answering this question are also answering the most impactful experiences section of AMCAS. So I would, even if you have filled out that most impactful experiences section of AMCAS, I would still say yes for this question and just explain whatever the situation is again in different words. You could even refer back to your most impactful section and say, I discussed this in more detail in the most impactful experiences section of AMCAS. That would be perfectly fine. Okay, question number 8. Please share your reasons for applying to the Perelman School of Medicine. 1,000 character limit. So this is a typical why Perelman, why our medical school question. These are such important questions because they show that you understand what Perelman has to offer. You want to address those aspects of the curriculum that appeal most to you. You want to address those extracurricular and scholarly opportunities that exist that relate to your interests, the interests you've already demonstrated. That's key. You want to try to identify any research, again, that is related to research and interests you already have. And you want to try to identify specific researchers, specific projects, specific initiatives. Maybe there are even some departments at Perelman that are really unusual that will allow you to further explore some of your interests and some of your achievements that you have already demonstrated before medical school. So the key when you're answering this question is to come up with specific things that only Perelman offers, relate that to your interests and your achievements to show that Perelman would be a fantastic fit for you and that you have a lot of great reasons for wanting to attend. So I hope that was helpful. Good luck writing your Perelman secondary essays and good luck with the medical school admissions process.